Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This year is entitled, Why is Rashi so critical of Noach? Several times in the Parsha, Rashi is very critical of Noach. We have in the beginning of the Parsha, it's Sadiq B'Dor Atav, in his generation he was great, in other generations he wouldn't be great. Vayachal Noach, when he planted the vineyard. So Vayachal means of chulin, profane. And then another time, he entered because of the mabul, meaning he was lacking in his emun and Hashem. Only when it rained, that's when he went in. So I'd like to analyze that third example. Rashi says he was lacking emunah. Maybe not at all. He went ahead and he was hoping and praying that they're going to be saved. And he waited to see if it was really a mabul. Rashi himself even admits that in the beginning it started off as rain. It didn't have to be a flood. If the people did tshuva, God would have had a salvation. He would have made into Gishmei Bracha, rains of blessing, and not a flood. So Noach was right for waiting and hoping and praying that maybe there's going to be a salvation. So why is Rashi so critical? So the answer is, what was Noah's framework? Was Noah's framework, I hope it's not going to be a mabul. It was a scare tactic. It was fear. But they saw me building 120 years talking about the mabul, and it was really just, it was a show to get them to do tshuva. I guess it's possible. Maybe there'll be a flood. Maybe. I don't think so. Is that his framework? It is his framework. There will be a flood. That's the decree from Hashem. He told me from the beginning of Parshas Noach there's going to be a flood. The assumption is going to be a flood. This is divine justice. This is what God said, and that's it. Oh, there's a possibility it could be overturned because of God's compassion. And I'm hoping, and I'm doubting for that. But my assumption is what God told me. There will be a flood. But that's not where he was at. He was at that. It was not going to be a flood. It's a show. It's a scare attack. It's not going to be a flood. If you'd ask him, I guess it could be. But that wasn't where he was at in his heart and mind. And the fact is, once God said there'd be a flood, the assumptions will be a flood. There's a gzera from God, there'll be a flood. And the fact that you think God wouldn't do it, that means you're not really having total faith in God and the objective version of God, God as God says it, but rather you're giving it over the way you see how God should be. So your Noah's version of God is God who will not destroy the world. And therefore, God, he said he will, but he's not going to. Oh, so you're fitting God into your version of God. And it's interesting, Bill W. in Alcoholics Anonymous, one of his premises in the 12 steps is belief in God, but he didn't want to go ahead and keep people distant who weren't sure about God, atheists, agnostics. So he said a higher power as we see it. And it was a brilliant move because so many people, billions of people over the last 100 years were involved with their different ideas of God. But he left it open. He believed God's part of the healing process for an alcoholic or any addict, but he didn't want to go ahead and corner someone, then he's going to have to run. So that's fine for Bill and for the AA. The person has different versions of God. But for Noach and for us, our version of God has to be how God presents himself to us through the Messiah, through our tradition. And therefore, if God presents to us ourselves that he's really going to destroy this generation, then he's going to destroy it. That's the God. No, he won't do it. And there's an important message, I think, for all of us today as well, on a daily occurrence and certainly on a yearly and several moments in a decade. This is a very important point. I'd like to elaborate in the next year. Shalom.